Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Too Long Didn't Read, a series where we discuss some great books, chapter by chapter, for people who don't like reading. Today, we're going to cover the first chapter of A Game of Thrones, Bran 1. We start the chapter on a clear, cold morning at the end of a 9-year-long summer. A group of about 20 men has set out to see a man beheaded today, and it is the first time that our POV character Bran is allowed to join his father on an execution. Bran, also called Brandon Stark, is a 7-year-old boy, meaning that he has only ever known summer. His father, Eddard Stark, is the Lord of House Stark. He's 35 years old but looks a lot older, showing the toll life has had on him so far. His older brother, Robb Stark, also accompanies them. Robb is 14 years old and is a large, broad, muscular guy, who's also considered very fair and graceful. He's got the typical red-brown hair and blue eyes from his mother's side. All these characters are members of House Stark, a very important family in the series. The reason they're so important is because they are the Wardens of the North. That means that all of the province of the North answers to House Stark, and as you can see, the North makes up about half of the entire kingdom, giving them a lot of power. Now the Starks live in Winterfell, a castle located in the center of the North. It is an incredibly ancient fortress. Their sigil is a direwolf, and their iconic words are "Winter is coming." Living in the North, they know the real harshness that the winter brings. The Starks aren't the only people on this trip. There's some other important characters that tag along. Namely, Jon Snow. Jon is also 14 years old, just like Robb. But unlike Robb, he's very slender and tall. He is the bastard son of Eddard Stark, meaning that he's the unlawful child of Eddard with another woman that he was not married to. Bastards always get a last name based on the province they're from, so in the case of the North, that name is Snow, so we call him Jon Snow. Another important person is Theon Greyjoy. He's a 19-year-old, lean, dark youth, who finds everything very amusing. Theon is the son of House Greyjoy, another great house of the Seven Kingdoms, and he's been sent to live with the Starks as a ward from a very young age. Some other less important characters who tag along are Jory Cassell, the captain of the household guard, Hullen, the master of the horse, and his son Harwin. Now these characters are relatively minor, but they will continue to show up in later chapters, so I prefer to already mention them here. So this group of characters are on their way to have a man beheaded. Robb thought the man was going to be a wildling, someone sworn to Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. Now it is quite unique that there is a king beyond the wall because the wildlings are traditionally known for being free from kings and rule, so this is something we should pay attention to. Bran thinks back on the tales old Nan told him about the wildlings. He remembered the hearth tales old Nan told them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. They consorted with the giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with the others in the long night, to sire terrible half-human children. When they arrive, however, the man they find is not a wildling at all. It is Garrett, who we know from the prologue chapter. Bran pretends to seem older as Garrett is brought before his father. His father has a grim look to him. He had taken off father's face, Bran thought, and donned the face of Lord Stark of Winterfell. Lord Eddard gives the command as two guards drag Garrett to an ironwood stump. His ward Theon hands Eddard his sword, Ice. Ice is a Valyrian steel sword. Nothing holds an edge like Valyrian steel. The material is spell-forged and dark as smoke. The sword is wider than a man's hand and taller than Robb himself. Eddard took hold of Ice with both hands and said, "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon." the first of his name, king of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the first men, lord of the 7 kingdoms and protector of the realm. By the word of Eddard of House Stark, lord of Winterfell and warden of the North, I do sentence you to die. Jon tells Bran to not look away, that father will know if he does, and Bran obeys. Eddard takes off Garrett's head with a single stroke of the sword. The head rolls to Theon, who kicks it away, laughing. Jon calls Theon an ass, and compliments Bran for listening. After the execution, the group mount their horses and ride back home to Winterfell. Bran rides up ahead with Robb and Jon. Robb says the deserter died bravely, and that he had courage to face his death like that. But Jon disagrees, and says that it wasn't courage, but that he was dead with fear. Robb challenges Jon to a race to the bridge. Robb runs off, laughing and hooting, as Jon follows, silent and intent. Bran stays behind, and thinks about the dead man. He's lost in thought when his father, Eddard, rides up beside him. Bran says, Robb says the man died bravely, but Jon says he was afraid. What do you think? His father asked. Bran thought about it. Can a man still be brave if he's afraid? That is the only time a man can be brave, his father told him. Eddard asks if Bran understands why he had to do this. Bran says that Garrett was a wildling, and that they carry off women and children to sell to the others. His father smiles, and he explains that Bran is wrong. The man was not a wildling at all. He was instead a deserter from the Night's Watch, an oathbreaker. It's a crime, punishable by death, so he knows his life is forfeit if he's taken. Eddard specifies, however, do you understand why I must do it? But Bran has no answer. King Robert has a headsman to do this for him, after all. Eddard explains that their way is the older way, the way of the first men. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. And if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man does not deserve to die. A ruler who hides behind paid executioners soon forgets what death is. Jon reappears on the hill before them, shouting, Father Bran, come quickly! See what Robb has found! Eddard races off to join them, as Jory, Bran and the others join behind them. When they find the boys, Robb is crouching in the snow, holding something in his arms. Robb is sitting next to a dead wolf, but not just any wolf. It's a direwolf. It was the size of it that made him gasp. It was bigger than his pony, twice the size of the largest hound in his father's kennel. Theon says that there hasn't been a direwolf sighted south of the wall in 200 years. When Bran looks at his brother, he notices that he's holding a pup in his arms. Bran goes to pet it when Jon puts a second one in Bran's arms. There are 5 of them, he says. Lord Eddard asks what killed her, and Robb proudly explains what he already figured out before his father arrived. A piece of shattered antler stuck in the throat of the direwolf. Everyone reacts uneasily to this, even fearful, but Bran doesn't understand why. Eddard is surprised that she lived long enough to whelp. Cullen says that it doesn't matter anyway. They'll be dead soon enough. Bran cries out as Theon draws his sword and asks to give the beasts to him, but Bran protests, saying, No, it's mine. Robb commands to put the sword away, and says that they will keep these pups. Eddard disagrees. It is better to give them a swift death than to let them die of cold and starvation. Bran feels tears swelling in his eyes, and looks away, not wanting to cry in front of his father, but Robb protests, and Jon cuts in, saying there are 5 pups, 3 male, 2 female, adding that Eddard Stark has 5 trueborn children himself, 3 sons and 2 daughters, plus the direwolf is the sigil of their house. We can look at the family tree to follow Jon's logic. Eddard and Catelyn have 3 sons, Robb, Bran, and Rickon, and 2 daughters, Sansa and Arya. Eddard's face changes at this. Bran notes how Jon had omitted himself for this count to work. Their father understood as well. "You want no pup for yourself, Jon?" he asked softly. "The direwolf graces the banners of House Stark," Jon pointed out. "I am no Stark, father." Eddard says they will feed them themselves. They must train them, and train them well, for direwolves will rip a man's arm off his shoulder as easily as a dog will kill a rat. But he ultimately agrees, and they take the pups. Everyone mounts their horses as Bran enjoys his victory. He holds his pup, as he wonders what to name him. Jon suddenly pulls up, as he hears something. "There," he says, as he gallops back across the bridge. He returns smiling, holding a 6th pup. His fur was white, where the rest of the litter was grey. His eyes were as red as the blood of the ragged man who had died that morning. Bran thought it curious that this pup alone would have opened his eyes, while the others were still blind. "An albino," Theon Greyjoy said, with wry amusement. "This one will die even faster than the others." Jonsnow gave his father's ward a long, chilling look. "I think not, Greyjoy," he said. "This one belongs to me." And that is it for Bran 1. I hope you all enjoyed this chapter, and I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.